Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 and our chats with Emily, as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are in the Johnson edition. We turned out a poem 580, I Gave Myself to Him. When this poem was published in 1891, it's actually called The Contract. This is a fun poem because here we will have romance meeting law, if you will. What happens when love and law meet? We get a poem like this. Now, our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net, down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily, our playlist. I'm hopeful that you worked our set of introductory comments where we pointed out that Emily's father is a what? A lawyer. And in fact, Emily grew up in a house where she heard law language and contract language spoken all the time. In fact, we have Emily's signature 19 times on contracts by her father. In other words, her father would often use his daughter Emily as a signatory on any of these contracts. So Emily knew all about this. We're also hopeful that you've been following our stuff through our previous 579 poems. We just finished with 579. I had been hungry. And if you have, then you'll remember that in poem 116, she's suing God for the frost that kills her garden. And in poem 247, she offers to sign some kind of a contract or a bond to see, quote, her sovereign's face. So Emily's played this game. We're familiar with it. She knows the language of love. It is possible, one scholar's pointed out, that this is Emily's argument against the case for marriage. Emily, of course, never marrying in her life. Let's see how you read it. She says it this way. I gave myself to him and took himself for pay. The solemn contract of a life was ratified this way. The wealth might disappoint myself a poorer proof than this great purchaser suspect. The daily own of love deprecate the vision, but till the merchant buy, still fable in the isles of spice the subtle cargoes lie. At least 'tis mutual risk, some found it mutual gain, sweet debt of love each night to owe, insolvent every noon. Now, notice all the dashes in this poem. It's a jilting poem. It is kind of difficult to read. You probably heard me faltering a bit as I read it, the rhythms, but I think that's the whole point. In other words, Emily is working through the process of what does it mean to sign a contract and to give oneself to him. Now notice him is capitalized, and again, typical Emily, she doesn't tell us the antecedent to the pronoun him is, right? Some have read it as actually Jesus Christ. In other words, I gave myself to Christ. Others have said, no, this is the muse of poetry that she gave herself to. And then others have said she is working through the potentiality of what it would be like to give herself to a mate. That is to say, to be married. So I'll let you decide how you read this. I gave myself to him and took himself for pay. All contracts are symbiotic. That is to say, if you're giving yourself to someone, they are by definition receiving that gift and therefore giving themselves as well to you in some kind of contract. The solemn, I think that's the possible key word, contract of a life was ratified this way. This is, of course, again, solemn, and yet this poem has a tone of almost like banter about it. The wealth might disappoint. I love her use of the word might here. When we get to 696, it'll be acres of perhaps, is the way she says it. In other words, she's speculating on what is gained through this contract of her giving herself to him, right? Myself a poorer prove than this great purchaser suspect. In other words, I might not be what whoever he is in the poem bargained for during my giving myself to him. The daily own of love. Emily loves this kind of thing. She'll play the word own instead of ownership. Action becomes object, as one scholar has commented with this, her use of the language here. The daily own of love. In other words, you never know how things are going to turn out. Think about it contractually. Think about it in terms of marriage, however you wish to understand that term marriage. And then she'll use the word deprecate. It's the only time she ever used it in all of her poetry, and I think it is a key word as well in this poem. Deprecate the vision. In other words, we always kind of imagine how things are going to turn out, and then the contract happens, and then we got to find it out. We'll never know till the contract's been signed, till the marriage, if you will, has happened. But till the merchant buy, right? That's the only way. Still fable in the isles of spice, the subtle cargoes lie. In other words, until we've made the journey and delivered the goods. We don't really know how the receiver is going to think of the goods. And then she finishes with almost an ironic throwaway. At least, dash, 'tis mutual, dash, risk. Which is true. Both parties are risking in any contract. Agreed? Both parties risk in contract. Some, dash, found it, dash, mutual gain, dash. And then she'll say, sweet debt of life. I told you she uses this word sweet in 113 of her poems. Sweet debt of life, dash, each night to owe, dash, insolvent, dash, every noon, dash. Insolvent, by the way, only gets used one other time in 1475. What exactly is it that Emily's doing here? I think at 2a, the major message here is that it's often hard to know if things will turn out well or not before the contract has been signed and you've gone through the process. In other words, what is Emily's observation? In the life of choosing, it isn't the choice that matters. The question is, can you live with the choice that you've made? Because often in life, the choices we make cannot be unchosen. Here, she gave herself to him, right? And then once it's done, it's done. It isn't a question of what you decide to do, Emily suggests. It's rather, how well can you live with that? And not just you, but the, obviously, recipient on the other side of the contract. At 2b, I love the language of law and economics as it relates to love. It's fun. You can tell Emily's having fun in this poem. At 3a, we mentioned 116 and 247 as both examples. You can go back to our study of it earlier. Finally, at 3b, just to own a poem like this, what was a time when you had to learn to live with a hard choice because there was no undoing it, and the contract that you gave yourself to was either positive or negative, maybe both? Thank you.